Kakadosh Boker Tov, we're going to continue with Daf Yod Amud Aleph. So on 10A1, we just finished by saying that it's according to Shitat Rebbe, you need two pasim, which are two different types of, we already said the pasim, I think we even had a picture of it in the, here it is. These are the two pasim. I'm sharing the screen, if you could see it over here. Here you have one pas, and here you have the other pas. So according to Shitat Rebbe, you need two pasim in order to permit it. Because we learned in the right, the chatzer, a courtyard, which was broken open to the Reshut Rabim, that it has more than 10 amot over here. Remember, the green grass is always Reshut Yachid. This paved road is always Reshut Rabim, and this is a mavui. Remember, anything that's paved like this, it's a mavui. Okay? So it's going to be niteret bepas. It's going to be permitted with one pas, but according to Rebbe, you need two pasim. Okay? Fine. Says the Gemara, hi, my, what type of answer is this? If you're going to tell me that if it's going to be looked upon on the outside, meaning you could see it on the outside, but it's equal on the inside, it's not considered a lechi, it's not considered a side post. So the Rebbe, that he says that you need two pasim, he holds like Rabbi Yosef, that he says that it has to be minimum of 3 tfachim. That means each one of those sticking out has to be 3 tfachim on each side. And he doesn't hold of, not like Rabbi Zera, that we're talking about like a small wall going into a bigger wall, or not like Ravina, that he said we're talking about a small, that there's no small chatzer going into a bigger chatzer. Mishum hachim, because of that, ketana be'eser ugdula be'chadesre, when you have the smaller one with 10 and the bigger one with 11, Mishum de Rebbe sav like Rabbi Yosef, because Rebbe holds like Rabbi Yosef. Ela'i amarta, but if you're now going to tell me that if you could see it on the outside and it's equal on the inside, it's going to be like a lechi. And we hold like Zira and like Ravina. The Rebbe doesn't hold like Rabbi Yosef. Why is it that we said that the bigger one needs to be in the 11 amot? If you're going to come to permit the bigger one and carrying, it should be enough 10 amot and 2 tfachim, because each one is enough, right? A tefach. Okay? And if it's going to be that you're coming to explain that the smaller one is going to be a sur to be metaltel in the smaller one, so then it should have told us that even if it's going to be much further away, it would have been the same halacha. But rather it comes to teach you that if you could see it on the outside, but it's equal on the inside, it's not a lechi. So Shema Mina, you're right. This is exactly what we were trying to bring down. Okay? This is the Pasechad. Okay, fine. This is the next one that we're going to do right now in a second. Okay? Fine. So says the Gemara, Amar of Yosef, says of Yosef, Lo shmi'a li hashmata. I didn't hear this braita. So Amar Abaye comes and he tells Yosef, Atamat nihalan, you did, right? You did tell it to us. Ve'ahamart nihalan, and you told it to us with regards to this. Ve'amar Rabbi Bar Abba Amar Rav Huna. Says Rabbi Bar Abba in the name of Rav Huna, we're in Daf Yod Amud Aleph, coming close towards the 2 dots, right? Ve'amar Rabbi Bar Abba Amar Rav Huna, but says Rabbi Bar Abba in the name of Rav Huna, Lechi hamoshech in dofno shel mavui. So again, if you have a lechi which is going to be like this, yeah, look at the picture right here. The lechi, right? That's what it says here. Lechi hamoshech in dofno shel mavui, pachot me'arba amot nidom mishum lechi b'shem shemchul aprimi, which means it's sticking out in the public domain. Okay, so now this is the chudo aprimi. This is the inner side. Okay, so now on this inner side, right, you're even allowed to use it. That's what we're trying to say. Okay? So says the Gemara.
Rabbi, where are you? Which number are you on?
10A1, probably A2.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Okay? We're in the middle of the page. We're before the 2 dots. Okay, so he says like this. Rami Bar Abba Rav Huna, Lechi hamoshech in dofno shel mavui. If you have a lechi which is going through like the dofen of the mavui, which means it's continuing the wall. Here, if you look at my cursor, This is the wall of the mavui. And all of a sudden, this lechi, this is called the lechi, the side post. But instead of the side post being here and it's very small, it continued like a wall into the Reshut Rabim. Remember, anything which is paved like a street is Reshut Rabim. Anything which is paved like this is a mavui. Anything which is green is considered the Reshut Yechid, the private domain. Okay? So if it's going to be less than 4 amot, nidon mishum lechi. So then it's going to be like a lechi. Okay? So he says, umishtamesh im chudo pnimi. You're allowed to even use the inner part as well. Arba amot, nidon mishum mavui. If it's going to be 4 amot or more, then it's like a mavui. V'asur lishtamesh bekulon. You're not allowed to use it at all. Ve'at amart la'alan. So now you actually told us, but you actually said the following. You said, Shema min atlat. We learned from this halacha 3 different halachot. Halacha number 1, Shema mina ben lechayayin asur. That you're not allowed to be metaltel in between the lechis. Okay, in between each lechi, you're not allowed to be metaltel. Okay, number 2. Okay, it says over here. We're going to explain that picture in a second. Number 2, ben lechayayin asur. Number 2, Shema mina meshech mavui barba. That the mavui is going to be minimum of 4 amot. And therefore, if it's going to be 4 amot, it takes away the name of the lechi and it becomes part of the mavui. Number 3, Shema mina nireh b'chutz v'shaveh mifnim. If you could see it on the outside of the mavui, and on the inside of the mavui it's equal, you don't see it, right? It's like flushed. So then it's like a lechi. So those are the 3 different halachot that we learn from this halacha. So says the Gemara, v'hilchatan, halacha is, nireh mibachutz v'shaveh mifnim, nidon mishum lechi. That if you could see it on the outside and it's equal on the inside, it is a lechi, right? But tiyufta v'hilchata. So says the Gemara, this in itself is already a tiyufta and a hilchata, right? Which means that it's already a question. So says the Gemara, why? Because we asked the question against it, and then we said, that's halacha. How could it be? We're asking a question. The Gemara started, right, when he was trying to say that he was trying to say a question. Right? At the beginning of this Amud, we said that when you have a small chatzer open up to a bigger one, we said that it's nireh b'chutz v'shaveh b'ifnim is not a lechi. Now we're saying it is a lechi. Remember, the concept of nireh b'chutz v'shaveh b'ifnim, let me see if I could find the picture quickly.
It's picture number 69.
69. Thank you, Richard. I see you're on top of it. There you go. Yeah? No, this is the 69 was the small chatzer into the big chatzer, but I'm trying to look for, here it is. No, this one. Nireh b'chutz v'shaveh b'ifnim, this one. 67, Richard. This is the one, the 69 was the one that you're correct, that we're talking about a small one to a bigger one, but we're talking about this concept, that it's nireh, the lechi is nireh b'chutz, you could see it on the outside, but on the inside it's equal, it's flushed. Meaning from the inside, I don't see any lechi. It's only from standing on the outside here that I realize that here there's an indent in the wall, and this is considered a lechi. So says the Gemara, 2 minutes ago at the top of the page, we just said this is not considered a lechi, and right now we're saying the hilchata, the halacha is that it is considered a lechi. So the Gemara answers in yes. The fact that we learned Reb Chia held according to this, so therefore this is how we're paskening. So if you would have an indent in the wall like this case here, 67, it's considered a good lechi. It's considered a good side post in order to permit this entire mavui. Remember, green area here, private domain. This paved area, mavui. The road area, public domain, Reshut Rabim. Remember that, okay? Always have to remember that. Fine, we go back to our pictures. This is now going to be after the 2 dots. Okay? Fine. So the Gemara now says, Ve'arachav me'esed yimaet. Okay, if it's going to be the width of more than 10 amot, so you have to minimize it. It means if it's too big, you have to minimize it because it cannot be more than 10 amot. Okay? Amar Abaye says, Tana, we learned in the Braita, Ve'arachav me'esed yimaet. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, and so according to Rabbi Yehuda, you don't have to minimize it. It's only according to Tanakama. Ve'ad kama. How much, according to Rabbi Yehuda, is the limit? Meaning what? The limit is the sky's the limit. You could have, an entire city, and you're just going to say that's considered part of the entrance of the mavui. So Sava Ravachai, Kamed Rav Yosef Lememar. So Ravachai said in front of Yosef, he thought to saying, Ad 13 amah v'shlish, until 13 amot and a third. So 13 and a third amot. Okay? Remember, every amah is 48 centimeters. It's around half a meter. So 13, right, would be 6.5, and then another third. So we're talking about almost around 7 meters, right? A little bit less, obviously, around, let's say, 6.5 meters. So he says, where are we learning from? Kal v'chomer mi paseh biraot. It's a kal v'chomer from paseh biraot. What does that mean? I'll show you the picture of the paseh biraot, right? Here it is. This is paseh biraot. Can everyone see, or I'm blocking it a little bit? This is paseh biraot. Here you have 13 and a third amot. Here 13 v'shlish amot. So 13 and 1/3 amot between here, right? And then here, look, this is paseh biraot. I don't know how you want to call this in English. It's like a corner.
Is it a mavoi? People walking back and forth?
No, but in this area is usually where they have the animals, and then here they have like water to drink. But here it's an open area. This is the mavui.
What's on the other side of those bricks? What are those bricks?
These bricks are mavuis. This is a mavui, and this is a mavui. This is paseh biraot. Okay, so it says kal v'chomer from paseh biraot. Just like the paseh biraot, we said sheitarta ba'en parutz merubeh al haomed. Here, what do you have more? Open space or closed space? You have obviously more open space. Look at this. This is all open. So 13 and a third here, 13 and a third here, 13 and a third here, 13 and a third here. Here you have tons. What do you have closed? Look, this little area. That's nothing. So here you permitted, even though you've got much more open area, that's called parutz, like prutza. Prutza is somebody which is uncovered or open. So also parutz merubeh al haomed. Haomed is something standing, something physical standing, and this is open more than which is covered. So it says, lo itat, but you didn't permit more than 13 and a third amot. Mavui, which is more stricter, that you didn't permit parutz merubeh al haomed. Shouldn't it be maximum 13 and a third amot? That's what the Gemara says. So the Gemara answers, vehi anotenet. Says, 1 second, the exact opposite. Paseh biraot sheitarta ben parutz merubeh al haomed, lo tatir ben yoter m-13 amot shlish. Mavui sheitarta parutz merubeh al haomed, tatir bo yoter m-13 amot shlish. He says like this. He's saying the exact opposite. He's saying if it's going to be by the paseh biraot that you did permit it, and you didn't permit it more than 13 and a third, but a mavui, which you did not permit it, which means that you have the majority walls, meaning you have to have by a mavui majority walls. So in such a case, you should permit even more than 13 and a third. Meaning the only reason why you permitted only up to 13 and a third is because the majority is open. But if the majority is closed like a mavui, because the mavui has to be majority closed, so you should permit much more than 13 and a third. Okay, until here clear? Yeah? So says the Gemara, inami, or if you want, you could say lidach kisa, the other way around. Paseh biraot be'akalta be'uchad kula, akil be'ukula acharina. He says, paseh biraot, you were already lenient. The leniency was that you don't need majority walls. So now what? You're going to do another leniency that you could do more than 13 and a third. Mavui, klalu, but mavui, right? It could be that maybe they were never lenient at all, right? Not even in 13 and a third. So therefore, you have two directions to go. Either that a mavui should be more stringent or more lenient than the paseh biraot. So therefore, for you to tell me in Shitat Rabbi Yehuda that you could only permit until 13 and a third, whoever told you such a thing? Maybe Bemet it's not true. So says the Gemara, Tani Levi actually taught in a Braita. Mavui shurachav 20 amah. If you have a mavui which is already 20 amot thick, that means the width of the mavui is 20 amot. Noetz kaneh be'emtzeito v'dayo. What do you have to do? You have to put a kaneh. Yeah? You have to put a kaneh inside of it. Yeah? And then what do you do? It's already enough. What does that mean? Look, if you look in the screen, here you have it. You put a kaneh in the middle. This is 20 amot. Put a kaneh in the middle, a reed in the middle, like a thing in the middle, and then it's already good. However, though, Hu Tani La V'hu Amar La, Levi himself was one that said this, and he said the following. He came and he said, right, Hu Tani La V'hu Amar La, Den Alacha Keota Mishnah. We don't pass like this Mishnah. Ika Damri, there are those that say, Amar Shmuel Mishmed de Levi, he says Shmuel in the name of Levi, En Alacha Keota Mishnah. We don't pass like that Mishnah. Ela Heichi Avid, so how are you going to do it? So Amar Shmuel Mishmed de Levi, says Shmuel in the name of Levi, Daf Yomi Bet, Ose pas kavua asara, you make a pass which is 10 tfachim tall, b'meshech 4 amot, right, by 4 amot, u'mamido le'orko shel mavui, and you put it inside of the mavui. So again, let's see here. Here you go. Shmuel says you make a ose pas gavua 4 amot, right, b'meshech 4 amot, right, u'mamido le'orko shel mavui. So here, you put it, this is 4 amot. You see here, this is going to be 4 amot. And you're putting it in the middle of the mavui, like going inside of it. Okay? Inami, or next answer, like Rav Yehuda. The Amar Rav Yehuda says, mavui shehu rachav 15 amah, here you have 15 amot. Okay, on this picture now. 15 amot, that's the next one, 77. So it says, Marchik shte amot ve'ose pas. Here you have 2 amot. That's a 2 here, and you make a pas, right? Shalosh amot for 3 amot. Here's the 3 amot, and then by doing that, it's going to be okay. Why? Because it comes out that it's considered that 5 amot are covered. Because remember, if it's 2 amot, you say levud, which means that it's connected. Then you have 3 amot, so now it's 5. 5 amot, 15 minus 5 is 10. So now you only have 10 amot open, and then it's okay. Okay, so ask the Gemara, V'amai, why? Yeah, says the Gemara, V'amai, why? Ya'aseh pas, amau mechza, just make a pass 1.5, that's this picture here. I went to picture 80, those other pictures were Rashi. Here's a pass of 1.5. Yarchik shte amot, distance yourself 2 amot. Then again make another pass of 1.5, right? And then that's it. So here you have 1.5 is 3. 2 in the middle is 2, is going to be 5 in total. Again, you have the same thing. Why did we say here distance yourself 2 and then you do 3, do 1.5, distance 2, and then 1.5. And again, you still have 5. 15 minus 5 is 10. Here you have 10 amot. Shmamina comes to teach you, Omed merube ala parutz mishte ruchot lo ave omed. If here you have omed, and here you have omed. Omed means that there's a wall, that it's standing. Omed, which is merube ala parutz on both sides, is not good. Because here you have 1.5 and here you have 1.5, but each one is less than the 2 in the middle. Meaning even though between the 2 you have 3, so that's more than the 2 in the middle, but since the omem merube is only on 2 sides, so I don't combine them. So therefore the 2 is bigger than the 1.5, the 2 is bigger than 1.5, and it's not good. So I can't do this option. Makes sense, no?
So basically what we're trying to do here to make sure that the people, this is like it's private domain when we're doing all this.
Yes, because remember, according to the shita that we just mentioned, the mavui cannot have an entrance of more than 10 amot, or more than 5 meters. Here you have an entrance of 15 amot, which is like 7.5 meters. So how do I get rid of that? So I have to make a wall. Now, technically, I don't need to make a full wall to minimize it. What am I allowed to do? I'm allowed to make another wall. So here, the option that we gave before was 2 amot here, right? Then 3 amot here, right? And that was okay. So the Gemara says, right? Sorry, 2 amot empty, and then 3 amot right here. And then that minimizes it, because that's 5. So the Gemara asks, why do you have to do 2 and then 3 to 1.5, 2 and 1.5? So again, you still have 3 of wall, 2 of empty, which equals 5. 15 minus 5 is 10. Here you have 10. That's perfect. So the Gemara answers here, since you only have more wall than empty space, only because you're combining the 1.5 here on 2 sides, we don't say that. And therefore it doesn't count. Okay? So says the Gemara, Leolam Eimalach, really I'm going to tell you, Lo Havi Omed, that it's not considered Omed. Veshani Hacha, and it's different over here, the Ati Avida Dagisa Avida Dagisa Mvatele. The David is going to come from each side and it's going to be Mvatel, which means here I have the Avid, right, which is the empty space on each side. which is going to annul it. Okay? Fine. So says the Gemara, right? V'yaseh pasama v'yerchikama, v'yaseh pasama v'yerchikama, v'yaseh pasama. He says, 1 second. Why don't you just do here an ama, distance 1 ama, here an ama, distance an ama, here an ama. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2 amot of empty space, 3 amot of wall. In between there's 1, and here there's more omed merubeh ala parutz. There's more, or it's the same. Because here you have 1, and here you only have 1. Here you have 1, only 1, 1. So therefore, it's not that you have to combine the walls in order to annul the empty space. Each one has enough. Why can't you just do that? Shmamina omed keparutz asur. This comes to teach you that if it's the same value, the wall and the empty space, it's also asur. You always have to have, it cannot be equal. It always has to be that there's more wall than empty space. Exact same value, which here you have 1 and 1, does not help. So says the Gemara, Leima, why don't we just say, Ema lecha mutar, I was going to say it's permitted, but here it's different, because the avid on both sides here are going to be mevatel the wall. The avid, the empty space here, empty space here, empty space here, empty space here, it's going to annul them. And that's why it doesn't count. So says the Gemara, fine. Take 1 amma here, do 1.5 here, 1 amma here, and 1.5 here. Now here you have, each one is more than the empty space. You only have 1 in between, and it's perfect. So says Gemara, you're right, you could do that as well. Right? But they didn't want to tell you to do that because that's just more work. What's easier, to do an empty space of 2 and then a wall of 3? Or to do empty space of 1, 1.5 wall, empty space of 1, 1.5 wall? It's much more difficult. So says the Gemara, so he says, 1 second, why don't we suspect that maybe when you had such a way of 10 amot, maybe you're going to start going through the entrance of the 2 amot. And therefore, that's why it's better to do this one than the other one. Look, here, it's only 1 amah. So it's much harder to walk through. But if it's going to be 2 amot at the entrance, and then 3, maybe instead of going through this entrance, I'm going to go through the small entrance. So says the Gemara, okay, says the Gemara, usually, there's a chazakah that people will not leave a big entrance and go for a small. If you have an entrance of 10 amot, why in the world would you go through an entrance of 2 amot? Doesn't make sense. You understand? Like, it just doesn't make sense. You have such a big entrance. What are you doing? So it says the Gemara, so what's the difference between Rabbi Yami and Rabbi Yasi? That they said that if you have 3 tfachim or more on a side wall, you're not allowed to carry you in it. Why? Because maybe they're going to start carrying in and out through that little tiny wall. But why? Why are we going to suspect that you're going to start carrying from within that wall? So says the Gemara, you understood the case. We're talking about where you had a breach in the wall in the middle of the mavui. And if it's going to be more than 3 tvachim, you're not allowed to carry in the mavui at all. Why? Maybe you're going to go in and out through that little breach. But why? You just told me that you would never use a small breached wall if you have a huge entrance. Doesn't make sense. So answers the Gemara, Hatam kamayt v'ilucha, achalo kamayt v'ilucha. He says, no. There I'm doing a shortcut. Meaning if in the middle of the mavui I have a breach, I'm going to cut through it to use it as a shortcut that I would do. But if I'm not using it as a shortcut and I'm going through the entrance of the mavui and I have a huge door and a small door, why in the world would I use a small door? Doesn't make sense. Okay? Fine. Sanan Hatam, we learned also there in the Braita. Or hasla. Let's see what it is here. This is the or hasla. It's like a toilet. You see? So it says over here the halal shelo and the little one and the entrance, the hole, mitzarfim betefach. It's going to be 1 tefach. It's mitzaref. To do it, this is tumat oil met. which means that if you had a kezait of flesh underneath of a deceased person underneath or utensils, so it's going to be mitameh tumat ohel. Okay? My ora asla, what is ora asla? So says the Gemara, right? What is ora asla? Amar Rav Yochanan, or kisui shel bet hakiseh. We're talking about from the washroom. Okay? So says the Gemara, v'kama, how much is the whole? Right? How much is the whole? In order to be batel and to add in, to join to the tefach. So Kiata Rav Dimi says it's buying 2 fingers, mikan, and 2 fingers mikan. It's buying revach be'emtzan, 2 in the middle, which means 6 fingers in total. Okay, 6 etzbaot. Every etzba is 2 centimeters, so it's 12 centimeters. Okay. Fine. So says the Gemara, Amale Abaye Rav Dimi. Says Abaye to Rav Dimi, Mi pligitu. What are Ravin and you arguing on the shiur of the ora asla? On the shiur of how much do you need? We just said 12 centimeters because it's 6 fingers, and every single etzba is 2 centimeters. So it says Amale. So he says, Lo. It all depends on big fingers or small fingers. Velo pligim, but we're not arguing, which means the big finger is a gudal. A gudal is 2 centimeters. So 4 of them is 1 tefach. Okay? And that's why he said that it's going to be 4 fingers. And the other one said it's going to be, because again, one more time, there were 2 different shiurim. The first one was Rav Dimi. He said it's 2 fingers, and 2 in the middle. When Ravin came, he said it was 1 finger, and 1.5 fingers, right? So therefore, how does it work then? Because it's only becoming 4. So he says, right? He comes and he says as follows. He says, are they arguing? He says, no, it depends which fingers we're using. We're using the thumb or this finger, right? This finger is 1.5 in order to get to the thumb. So therefore, they weren't arguing, okay? When I said 4 fingers, we're talking about 4 thumbs. And when he said 6 fingers, we're talking about regular fingers. Okay, velo pligin, we're not arguing. So Amalei, so he comes and he says now, Laye is the truth. Ligitu, or they are arguing. Why? He says, this machloka was the same machloka that we mentioned before. That when you have more, which is omed merubela parutz, only from 2 sides. Right? Let's see if we have it. No. Basically like this. Here, we don't actually have a picture. Chaval, we're missing a picture. Right? Here, what are we talking about? Again, we're talking about this toilet. Now, in this toilet, how much are we actually talking about? So here we said that you needed, right, whether it's going to be 2 fingers, 2 fingers, 2 fingers, right? Or we said it was going to be a 1.5, right? 1.5, and then in the middle, one finger. Okay? So now what's happening is that we have a problem. The problem is that when you have 1.5 on one side and 1.5 and then the one in the middle, right? He says the machloket is that, again, if you only have omem rubela parutz, which means you have more wall than open area, right? Only when you're joining 2 different sides. So ledidach, according to you, have yomem mishter, it's considered omed on 2 sides. But according to Ravin, meruach achat have yomed, it's only omed on 1 side. Mishter, it's not considered omed. But if you're going to tell me lo pligitu, that they're not arguing, le Ravin, according to Ravin, you should have said etzba ushlish mikan, etzba ushlish mikan, ve'etzba ushlish revach be'emtza. You should have said 1 1/3, 1 1/3, and 1 1/3. Why didn't you say that? That means everything's the same. So the fact that he said no, that we're talking about that each one of them was thicker than the hole in the middle, is because you do not add the 2 sides into the middle, which means you do not add from the 2 sides. Okay? Fine. So now it says the Gemara, Ve'elamai. So then what? Leginu, no, obviously they're arguing. Ledidi hachi ba'ilel memar. This is what we want to say. Etzba u'shnei shlishim mikan. We're talking about 1 etzba. Yeah? He says, he says, Etzba u'shne shishim mikan, ve'etzba u'shne shishim mikan, ve'etzba'im u'shne shishim revach be'emtza. So he says, according to me, it should have said 1 etzba and 2/3. So that's 1 finger and 2/3 of a finger on one side, 1 finger and 2/3 of the finger on another side, and then 2 fingers and 2/3 in the middle. Right? That's what you could have said. And then that's a bigger chidush, which means that the halal is going to be much bigger than each one on the 2 sides. The empty part in the middle is going to be much bigger than the 2 sides. So says the Gemara, like, remember the Pagila, so they're arguing. So says the Gemara, B'parutz omed Pagila. No, the machloket is, can you have it equal? You remember we said before, can you have 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1? 1 empty, 1 wall. 1 empty, 1 wall. So there was, the empty was the exact same as the wall. It's called parutz ke'omed palginan, and that's a machloka between them. Okay? Fine, the 2 dots. Im yesh lo tzurat hapetach, if it has tzurat hapetach, af al pi sherachav me'eser, even though it's going to be rechav 10 amot, eno tzarich lemayet, you do not have to be memayet, right? You don't have to minimize it. Okay? Ashkechan tzurat hapetach ma'hanyam berochbo, right? So it comes out that we see that the tzurat hapetach does help, even if it's going to be more than 10 amot, which means you have an entrance more than 10 amot, you make tzurat hapetach, make a korah, which is a top beam, and the 2 side posts, that's tzurat hapetach, and now it helps, even though it's going to be more. And also an amaltera, which is a korah, which is like a top beam, also is going to help when it's on top of it, even above 20 amot. You remember the maltera was that it have a special design on the top of the beam, and therefore it catches the eye. I mean, usually above 20 amot, it doesn't catch the eye, but if it's got a special type of a design, it does catch the eye. Okay? So says the Gemara, Yodalef Amudalef, Ipchamai, what's going to happen, right, in the opposite case? Does Surat HaPetach help, even if it's going to be more than 20 amot? And does a Maltera help, even if it's going to be more than the thickness, the width of 10 amot? Again, one more time. Surat HaPetach helps for more than 10 amot wide. A maltera, which is the design on top of the beam, which is above 20 amot, helps even though it's above 20 amot. Now the question is, do we now switch it around? Doesn't a maltera help if the thickness is more than 10 amot? Right? Remember, the maltera was the top beam with the design. Does that help if it's more than 10 amot thick? And does Surat HaPetach help if it's all the way up to the Shemayim, more than 20 amot? That's the Gemara is asking. So Tashima, we're going to try to bring a proof. The Tanya was went on Raita, Mavui shehi gavua me'esrim ama yimaet. We said that if a mavui is more than 20 amot, you have to minimize it. Okay? V'im yesh lo tzurat hapetach, if it has tzurat hapetach, eno tzarich l'mayet. You don't have to minimize it. A maltera b'rochbo mai. What about an amaltera on the width? So you see, here we're asking the question. Does the amaltera, which is this top beam here, does this permit the more than the width of 10 amot or not? So Tashima, we're going to try to bring a proof. To tell you, if it's going to be more than 20 amot, yimayet, you're going to minimize it. But if it's going to be more thick than the 10 amot, yimayet, you're going to minimize it.
20.
20 amot, sorry. Right? Yimayet, if it's going to be more than 10 amot, yimayet, minimize it. And if it's got tzurat hapetach, you don't have to minimize it. If it has a maltera, so it comes out that the Braita is saying that if it has an amaltera, you do not have to minimize it. My love, a seifa, are we not talking about the seifa? Again, one more time. The seifa said that if it's 10 amot width, okay, and it has surat hapetach, you don't have to minimize it. And if it has a maltera, you don't have to minimize it. So when it says if you have a maltera, doesn't that mean that the maltera also helps like surat hapetach? That even though it's more than 10 amot, it doesn't matter, it's okay? Says the Gemara, my love, a seifa, is it not going on the latter part of on the Braita, and then it makes sense? Says the Gemara, no. The maltera was only going on the former part of the part, when it said about the 20 amot. It doesn't go on the latter part, which is talking about the 10 amot width. It's talking about the 20 amot height. So a maltera only helps for height and doesn't help for width. That's what it's saying. Okay? Matni la Rav Yehuda lechia barav. Let me just check when is the next picture. No, this is Rav Kahana. Okay. So it says Matni la Rav Yehuda lechia barav. So Rav Yehuda was teaching Rav Chia barav this Mishnah in front of Rav, Kamed Rav. Eno tzarich lamayet. You don't have to minimize it. right? Amarle, he says, Atniye tzarich l'mayet. He says, no, you have to teach the people the Yeshua, you do have to minimize it, which means that the Maltera does not help. No, sorry, hold on 1 second. No, sorry. We're talking about the Tzurat HaPetach now. We're not talking about the Maltera anymore. The Tzurat HaPetach we're talking about, we just said that Tzurat HaPetach, if it's got more than the 10 amot, you don't have to minimize it. He went and he told them, no, you have to teach them that you do have to minimize it if it has more than 10 amot. Okay? So Amar of Yosef says of Yosef, Divrei Rabbeinu, from Rav we learn, Nilmad, Chatzer Shruba Petachim. When you have a Chatzer that the majority are entrances, the Chalonot, and windows, Ena Niteret B'tzurat HaPetach. It's not going to be permitted with Tzurat HaPetach, which means that if you're going to have a whole bunch of doors and windows, okay, on the sides, it's not going to be permitted with Tzurat HaPetach. Okay? Why? Because you have much more of paruts than merubeh. Remember, you have much more open space and closed space. Because of the windows and the doors, you have much more open space and door space than the closed space. My tama, what's reasoning? Only because it's more than 10 namot. Oser b'mavui, so it's going to prohibit the entire mavui. Parutz merubeh al-omed, oser b'chatzer. And parutz merubeh al-omed is going to prohibit the chatzer. Right? He says, ma yoter me'eser oser b'mavui, en onita b'tzurat HaPetach. Just like if by the entrance, if it's more than 10 amot, it's going to prohibit the mavui. So too, it shouldn't permit Tzurat HaPetach according to Rav. So too, parutz merubeh al-omed oser b'chatzer is not going to permit with Tzurat HaPetach. Which means there's two concepts here. We have parutz merubeh al-omed, and you have 10 amot. Okay, parutz merubeh al-omed means that when you have a chatzer, that you have more open space and closed space, you're not allowed to carry inside of it. Next halacha, if you have a mavui, that the entrance is more than 10 amot, you're not allowed to carry inside of it. Okay? So we're trying to say, just like by that Tzurat HaPetach does not help by mavui, if it's got more than 10 tfachim, 10 amot entrance, so too it shouldn't help by a chatzer if it's got more parutz merubeh al-omed. That's what we're trying to say. So the Gemara says, no, mal yoter me'eser ha'oser b'mavui, sheken lo itarta bo etzel paseh birot l'bimihir, tomar beparutz merubeh al-omed ha'oser b'chatzer, sheken itarta etzel paseh birot l'divrei hakol. We want to try to do the furthest, to give a rebuttal. And what we're trying to say is no. Why? By the mavui, we said Tzurat HaPetach is more stringent by the mavui. Why? You didn't permit by the paseh biraot according to Rabbi Meir, which means if you remember the paseh biraot was, you remember the 13 and a third open space, 13 and a third open space, you had like the corners, that's called paseh biraot. So by those paseh biraot, when we permitted carrying around it, right, around this well, they did it purposely so that way within the well you could carry. So in the actual mavui you couldn't carry. You go inside of this area, there's a well, and now you could give the water to drink to the animals, you could drink yourself, and you could carry within that little tiny area. That was the purpose of making it that way. So, and that's what we're going to learn later on in the Yud Zayin Mubet. So still over there, we did not permit when there was more than 10 amot according to Rabbi Meir, which means according to Rabbi Meir, it cannot be 13 and a third, it could only be 10 amot, right? But it would still permit it, even though it's got much more open space and closed space. So tomorrow, parutz merubeh al-omed, according to everybody. So says the Gemara, why don't we say that this is actually going to be a proof? That these walls, that the majority are open, and meaning if you have a house, that the majority are all windows and doors, mutar, it's going to be permitted. As long as you have more wall.
As long as they're closed.
Exactly. As long as you have more wall than open space. So says the Gemara, you really need the majority? You have to have you actually need more windows and things like that, but as long as you have more walls than open area. And that's what we're trying to say. You always need more walls than open area.
Do they have to be actually open or closed, or could they be capable of being open or closed? Like if there's sand and it's blocking it from being fully open or fully closed or something?
I'm not sure. It's a good question, but I would probably say that it has to be that it's closed, physically closed. If it's closed, it's okay. Okay? Fine. Now we're at the next picture. Amar of Kahana. Okay? Rav Kahana says, Kitanya ahi, when do we learn this? By when do we learn this concept that it has to be al parut? So you need more wall than open area. Bepitche shimai. Right? By pitche shimai. What is pitche shimai? There's a machloket. But here you could see the picture. Amar of Kahana, bepitche shimai. What is pitche shimai? Chadamar, one of them is going to say, Pligid of Nechum Rav Yosef. Chadamar, one of them says, Deletle shikfe. Does not have shikfe. This is shikfe. Shikfe means that it doesn't have like a straight doorpost. It's like here. You see, look, it's not a straight door. It's like this. That's called le shikfa. Shikfa like a mashkof. Mashkof is a doorpost. Okay, so that's one explanation. The other explanation is shelet le tikra. Next picture doesn't have a roof. Doesn't have the top post. Okay. So in that case, it's lacking Surat Petach. So therefore, that's why you need Omer Menubel Parutz. But if you do have, right, more, but you have Surat Petach, it's going to actually permit it. Ve'af Rabbi Yochanan, and even Rabbi Yochanan, right, he comes and he says, Savala lehad Rav. He holds like this of Rav. Right? Damar Ravim Baravada Mevitzav. It says Ravim Baravada Mevitzav name of Yitzchak. Maaseh be'adam echad mibikat bet chortan. It was a story of a person from Bikat Bet Chortan. Shena'at arba, right, kundusin, that he put 4 poles. That's this picture here. 4 poles. Okay. Barba pinot hasadeh, on 4 sides of the field. Umatach zemora alehem, and he put the zemora, this is like the vineyard, on top of it. So here you have 4 poles and the vineyard on top, like the vine on top. That's a zemora. Ubama said if he came in front of the rabbis, right? And they said that that's considered Surat Petach for Kilaim, which means that if they were going to be within this kundusim, it's going to be permitted, right, to plant different vegetables on the outside, and that's on the outside. And there's no Yisur of Kilaim. Ve'amar Shakish. So says the Shakish, just like they permitted Surat Petach for Kilaim, but this Surat Petach. You got a door, you got pole, like side post, and then top, beam. And that's what you have on 4 sides. So too, they permitted him on Shabbat. That means in Shabbat, you're allowed to carry within this area. Rabbi Yochanan says, Lekilaim etirulo, but in Shabbat, they didn't permit it. And it's only to do with Kilaim and not for Shabbat. Okay? So b'maya eskina, what are we dealing with? If you're going to tell me that it's on the side, okay? So he says, if you're going to tell me that he put it on the side, so V'amar Rav Chassa says, Surat Petach shasar min hatzad lo sav lo klum. If you put the Surat Petach on the side, it's nothing. That means if you put it on the sides and not on top of it, you didn't do anything. So what does it have to be? El al gaban, it has to be on top. So you see over here, this is on the middle. Meaning when you have to make Surat Petach has to be on top of the pole, not in the middle of the pole or anywhere below the top. You see? Here, look. It has to be on the top. If it's not on the top and it's in the middle, so then it's not good. It's not a Surat Petach. Okay? So says the Gemara, right? Uvemai, and what are we dealing with? If you're going to tell me that Surat Petach there was more than 10 amot, and on this Rabbi Yochanan is going to say on Shabbat no. So he says elalav. Obviously, we're talking about bietem. It has to be more than 10. Because remember, if it's less than 10 amot, for sure you're allowed to carry. Because if it's less than 10 amot, you're allowed to carry. It's only if it's more than a 10 amot you need a Surat Petach in order to permit the carrying within it. Okay. So says the Gemara, no. Leolam be'eser amot. Really, we're talking about 10 or less than 10 amot. And we're talking about minatzad. It's talking about from the side, meaning not on the top. You put the gefen on the sides, not on the top. And they're arguing in Shitat Rav Chasta. That is the machloket between Rav Yochanan and Shakish is the same machloket between Rav Shakish and Rav Chasta. That Surat Petach on the side is a kosher or not kosher. Okay, V'rami de Rav Yochanan de Rav Yochanan. V'rami de Rav Shakish de Rav Shakish. We're asking contradiction between Rav Yochanan and Rav Yochanan, Rav Shakish or Rav Shakish. The Amar Rav Shakish Mishum Rav Yehuda Rav Chanina, but says Rav Shakish and Rav Yehuda Rav Chanina. And they come and they say as follows, Pe'ah Yud Aleph Amud Amud Bet, Pe'ah, right? It says Pe'ah muteret linyan kilayim. Pe'ah is going to be permitted to do with kilayim. That means here we're talking about a zimurah, which is placed between one kundas and another kundas, is going to be permitted to do with kilayim. Let's see if we have the picture. No. Okay. Aval, however though, yeah, it says over here, however though, lo l'Shabbat, not to do with Shabbat. That means if they did this type of tzurat petach for Shabbat, you're not allowed to carry inside of it. Okay? Rabbi Yochanan says, just like Shabbat it doesn't count, so to by kilayim it doesn't count. Which means you see from here that they argue on each other. Because here Resh Lakish is saying tzurat petach helps, right? Whether to do with Shabbat or kilayim. And by us, he's saying that the pe'ah does not help, only by kilayim. The next contradiction between Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yochanan is, Rabbi Yochanan is saying that it does help for kilayim, and here he's saying Rabbi Yochanan is saying it doesn't help at all, because it's in the middle. So says the Gemara, Bishlama, the Resh Lakish, it's good that Resh Lakish and Resh Lakish is not a contradiction. Hadideh, had Rabbein. One of them was himself, and one of them was his Rebbe. That means the psak that he said by Bika Bechortan that the Piyah is going to permit to do with Shabbat is himself. The other one that he said it's only by Kilayim, not Shabbat, is Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Chanina, his Rebbe. Okay, and now Rabbi Yochanan is a question. So he says, if you're going to tell me Hatam al Gaban that over there it's on the top and here it's on the sides, so then it's good. But if you're going to tell me that both of them are on the side, so what are you going to say then? So says the Gemara, Leolam, really be'emet, we're talking about we're talking about on the sides. The Hatam be'eser, Hachav yoter me'eser. One of them is talking about if it's going to be 10 amot or less, and one of them is it's going to be more. Which means that if it's on the side, it's still going to be kosher if it's going to be 10 or less amot. If it's more than 10 amot, then it's not going to be kosher. If it's on the side, you need it on the top. You need the ones on the top in order to make it kosher. Okay, and how do you know the shanilam ben eser yoter me'eser? How do we know that there's going to be a difference between 10 and more than 10 amot by tzurat petach? Rabbi Yochanan said to Resh Lakish, Lo kach yamase, wasn't that the story? Shalach Rabbi Yeshua to Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuni lilmod Torah. Rabbi Yeshua went to Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuni to learn Torah. And even though he was an expert in Hilchot Kilayim, yeah, he says, he found them sitting between the trees. Yeah, he found them sitting between the trees. And he went and he pushed a zemorah, branches from one to another. One tree to another tree. He made like a tzurat petach. Okay, and he told them, Rebbe, kan, kan. If you have gifanim here, what's going to happen? Right? Is it going to be, are you allowed to, if you have here vineyard, are you allowed to plant other things on the side, which makes a kilayim? So Amarlo, he says, be'eser, if it's going to be with 10 amot, it's going to be permitted. More than 10 amot, it's going to be prohibited. So in my eskina, what are we dealing with? Ilem al gaban, if you're talking about that he's talking about on top, so then yoter me'eser asur? Why would it be asur if it's more than 10 amot? It's got tzurat petach. But Tanya, we learned to the Braita, Yashem kanina dokranim. If you had kanina dokranim, this is this. Dokranim. Kanima dokranim. Okay, vasalaim peah. And they made a peah, milamala, above it, here. Okay? Afilu b'yoter me'eser, even if it's going to be more than 10 amot, it's going to be permitted. And it has to be that they didn't do it on the top, they did it on the side. Right? Therefore, he said, Kamale be'eser is going to be permitted. It's going to be more than, if it's going to be be'eser mutar b'yoter me'eser, it's going to be asur. Shema mina, and that's exactly what we learned. Okay? So we're going to stop here. Or you guys want to continue until the Mishnah or stop here?
I think let's stop here.
Up here? Okay. Very good. So Bezrat Hashem,